Chengdu, China, where we are here for Game 4 between G2 and T1. And in a dramatic turn of events, it is G2 who currently sit at match point. After Game 1, T1 have looked out of sorts, I think, and G2 have very well punished them. The question is, will it continue?
It's a little warm in here, gents. It's not because I'm standing between you two.
T1 has been in a position like this many times before, right? They've been able to find their way out of series, and I think that something we discussed in the previous game was, okay, yes, you took away the Zac and you took away the Rek'Sai, but then you committed all these champions into a Poppy that you didn't expect. And the thing that I think is surprising T1 is G2's flexibility in the draft. The fact that they're willing to pick Yasuo in the top lane. The fact that they're willing to prioritize Orianna. Some of the shifts I want to see for T1, get Faker back on Azir or Orianna. Make that the priority pick. Kalista taken away does increase the value of the Varus. The question is, will G2 actually choose to ban that away? Or will they continue to get rid of things like the Ashe and the Rumble?
Also want to reiterate, when it comes to series, T1's, especially with the Worlds win, did really kind of shake off a lot of what happened for them in the, I don't know, what was it, like 6 finals beforehand. But Game 5s specifically still have been something that they have struggled with in terms of individual performances. As Guma, I think one of the few players on T1 where I feel like he's had a great series.
Yep.
It just,
oh yeah,
he's the guy known for the egg in the ramen. The egg is there, the ramen not so being cooked so far, and we got to talk about a little bit, as we'll talk about the picks as well. The fact that Faker isn't performing, we saw what it did to T1 last year when Poby came in, and that was because he was the voice, right, that the team needed. But it felt like the rest of the team was getting more dependable. But Faker, I can't remember the last time, even if he's not at the top of his game, that he genuinely just struggles as much in lane as we've seen. And credit to G2 as again, this time the Rek'Sai not going to be banned, gonna get picked up by Yike again.
I mean, the Azir is the obvious choice here for T1. Get Faker back on something he's comfortable on. His Game 1, yes, he faltered a little bit in the laning phase, but he bounced back and had a huge impact.
And you just have to look at the series against Gen G when he managed to solo get that quadra kill that kept T1 in the game in the finals. There is the Azir locked in. Will T1 look to their jungle?
Yeah, support or jungle, that's the question. Vi is still available, of course, if they want a little bit more lockdown. Or perhaps they want a little bit more frontline. Things like Xin Zhao still available. But if they want to just grab something like Nautilus too, I think are all very viable options. I think they're a little bit skeptical with support because they know the flexibility that Mickey is showing today. What will the direction be? Xin Zhao is going to be the lock-in for Owner. So there's their initiation, their frontline, and also a way to tank up any of the damage that G2 can throw out.
That said though, the Xin, we'll see to what extent Owner can have an impact into the Rek'Sai specifically.
Oh, G2 have brought out
Oh, they've done it! They went back! Cogmore!
So at the start of winter, Cog Braum was a thing that G2 just did on repeat.
Last year they did it too. Like, this was just a thing that they brought out. It was, I forget exactly what they used it as an answer for, but Cogmore Braum. Cogmore Braum was such an effective combo for them. And like, it's good into long-range comps because Cogmore, once you activate the W, you get to the hyperscaling point. You have so much utility with the Braum as well.
You can even team it up with Emilio if you want that extra range. We haven't seen a lane swap yet. Cog Emilio in a lane swap can be very powerful.
I mean, to get through the early levels, for sure. But in terms of taking towers, I don't know.
Not as powerful, sure. But Emilio can even go Demolish. You just go Revitalize Demolish on your secondary tree, and that helps you with the pressure on the lane.
Also wondering if T1 are also going to know that this and go for the takeaway of the Braum. No, it's going to be the Lulu ban instead.
I mean, much more traditional Cog Lulu. We see that quite a bit. Cogmore Braum is more of a G2 special. Renata's still a possibility with how many people want to step into you. Renata ultimate here, very
Braum
good.
is a wall, but Renata selects as effective disengage, right? And it just offers more scaling options for the Cogmore too.
Mickey hasn't lost on it this year either.
That would be something.
Carrier's barred.
Yeah, Carrier has relied on this. There are 3 immobile characters on the enemy team. It is, yeah. He wanted Lux, but he didn't play Lux, so that was a bit of a problem.
I was going to say earlier, we haven't seen K'Sante so far this day.
K'Sante barred. All right, so Carrier is not going to play as much for lane and is going to look to impact the map. Maybe he can get Faker off to a better start, work with Owner to find some impact on the map, but a more traditional front to back coming out from T1. And they round things out with a Poppy once more.
It's what we talked about in the previous game. The Poppy is also great into the Cassante. Last time,
Oscar against Gen G.
Exactly. They don't want to go for it. And the early laning phase is actually really, really punishing. Does mean that, again, I feel like we really expected there to be more lane swaps in this series.
Yeah, I did expect more lane swaps. Also because G2 talked about them all the time. Yeah. Like, hey guys, we like lane
They
swaps.
literally only did lane swaps in the playoffs. Yeah. Come into MSI, everyone's doing lane swaps, and then G2's like, no, we're over that.
That's subverting expectations. It's what G2 do so well with it.
I mean,
maybe extrapolating that a little.
It's one of the things where, like, the truth is, coming into this series, we had no idea what G2 was going to look like. They were one of the first teams to get to China. They immediately went into scrimming. Like, they've done nothing but prep to prove people that they can be the drivers of their own destiny. And today, taking 2 games off T1, who's already changed the opinions of many, the question is, can they close things out, or can T1 prove to the world, or remind the world, I should say, why they are the reigning world champions?
And T1 is on the precipice of reliving some very, very bad flashbacks to what was the darkest days for the LCK, and it was specifically T1 that G2 took down. T1, not only are they going to have to win this game, they're also going to have to conquer their game number 5 struggles that this team has dealt with over the last, 3 years since they've gotten together.
Once more onto the Rift, my friends, for what has been an electrifying series so far. I know a lot of the neutrals at home want 5. I kind of want 5 too. I think more of this would be fun. And I won't hide the fact that if G2 win this, what a day that would be for Europe. What a day it would be for G2. It's been 5 years since G2 last took a series off T1.
I want to echo again what I mentioned. Even in the game where he bounced back in game number 1, Faker has genuinely looked like the worst he has all year. Like his individual laning phase in the LCK wasn't why T1 was good, wasn't why T1 did so good at Worlds last year, and it wasn't why they've made so many consecutive finals necessarily. It was his voice, it was his shot calling, but he was always dependable in lane. He was always there to at least absorb pressure, absorb ganks. We saw a lot of that last year in Worlds as well. The way that he played against LNG, for example, I think was pivotal. And we're also seeing how pivotal, again, how essential Faker performing is to T1 as a team, as Broken Blade will get spotted.
Just trying to get his head in there, get the ward down to spot Owner's early pathing. Yike was spotted on a ward as well. The traditional Faker ward up near those Razor Beaks. So both the junglers' early positioning should be known by these two teams.
I really can't believe that Hansama just brought out the Cog more. I was kind of disappointed at last year's Worlds that we didn't get more of it. So for him to bring it out of his back pocket when they barely played, I don't think they did even play it this year once.
Played it once.
Yeah. Oh, one game, okay. But Cap's off to a good start in the lane, already putting pressure down. And you can tell Cap's in game 1. I mean, he was already having a solid game. You can see that he was kind of still feeling out the stage, getting some of the nerves out. 2, 3, and 4, his confidence has only grown. And it definitely feels like that he's getting the better of Faker in this series.
You have to remember, for G2, these are their first stage games as well. So having a few nerves, having a little bit of apprehension early doors isn't too surprising. Carrier and Guma, once again, getting level 2 first. Carrier's been so on point with these cosmic bindings. He's just so good at it.
Also see that the top side of the map, both junglers pathing towards bot, both spotted as well. Owner a little bit behind, particularly things like Raptors, Rek'Sai obviously choose through very, very quickly. Does mean that T1, again, ideally is going to look towards the crash. A really big turning point for me in the previous game was when Guma and Carrier were trying to punish, trying to catch a rotating Mickey on a ward. And that was the point where I feel like one of T1's finals outs in that game were taken away. This time around, Yike, going to look towards Faker, who already is pretty low. Owner.
He's not burrowed, so he doesn't have the tremor sense. He will know that Owner is in this sort of area. He's not going to step around to steal away the red. Now he checks the Razor Beaks, but it might just be a gank on Faker. Tunnel flash. Faker's on the right side of the map to react to this, though. Faker flashes early. Has to. Yeah, otherwise he's dead. Yike might still look for it. Owner's path down towards the Krugs. Yike
Mission
now
successful here. Carrier now on the roam, as you'd expect. Mickey quick to follow. Only level 2 from him, though. Does he have the handshake to maybe set up for a play? Neither going to connect. But this does give Yike control over the bot crab. Maybe you can get a double crab here. Oner is, of course, level 4, though, with the push in bot. No mana on Guma, but the low HP from Hans means that he's in some serious danger.
Yeah, Mickey's only level 2 as well. Yike's going to try and smite this away. Oner doesn't have a smite. Mickey with the handshake. Bad smite lands from Yike. There's the heal as well. Mickey has to flash. Yike flashes as well. Good reactions by Oner and Carrier.
Nice decision-making overall, knowing that on the roam back, it was very similar to what we saw in game 1 when Caps was going for the roam top. It was that in the rotation back that T1 was able to find the punish. They're skeptical about, spotted from the Tremor. But level 4 still for Oner. He can keep the pressure up here. He knows that he has the push in bot. Gumayushi still low on mana, but HP from Hans is still low enough that they can force this fight.
I can look for the smite here. Both of them have it. Oner doesn't get it. Yikes, secures it. Meanwhile, in the bot lane, Mickey and Hansam are forced away. Gumayushi looking for that first plate.
They pinged the ward as well. Oner definitely needs to get that. There's still pressure that comes out from this, but picking the Gromp up would have been really big. Oner's camps on the top side of the map already up. Is going to take the scuttle, but T1 really was looking for more there. Also saw an early proxy, I think, come out from Broken Blade, as of course the early levels are the roughest for the Xanta in this matchup. Don't really have any meaningful threat whatsoever, but also not tanky enough to take the beating from the Poppies. Carrier, as bards often do, trying to be annoying.
He's doing exactly that.
Wave nicely as well. But Hansam struggling in this lane matchup. We'll be honest, it's been a while since we've seen it, but Gumayushi still playing with the utmost confidence. Carrier leveraging his range and the pressure that he's generating, along with the jungle support to build up a lead already. And you mentioned it earlier, Chronicler, Gumayushi really has been the pillar for T1 in this series. I feel like that even in their losses, he still found ways to have impact in the game. It was much harder last game because of the Poppy, of course, but he's been doing what he can for the team. And I keep my eyes on him as we approach the mid to late game as still being a stalwart and a threat that G2 have to find a way to shut down.
Faker ticks over to level 6. Carrier was roaming towards mid, but just wants to get a bit of vision down. Oner taking his camps is slightly ahead of Yike because of the extra time Yike sort of poked his head into the jungle. It's about 1 camp in advantage for Oner. Zeus looking for the Intofos. Isn't going to land that Q3 as Yike clears out the vision and gets over to level 5.
One of the big things here is that both junglers have consistently been found as dodging the Wind Becomes Lightning. Their Owner still looking for Jace, but not going to continue. Obviously really hard to lock Rek'Sai down. Specifically the fact that neither Owner nor Yike at basically any point in this game have been not tracked by their respective opponents has meant that thus far not a whole lot of volatility in Truce. Oh, okay.
I think it's a wave clear plus maybe a catch there.
There's another wave.
Yeah. I think he was trying to catch
one though.
I think
got it.
I think he was trying to catch Faker off for sure. Doesn't have the TP, so he's likely going to stay to catch this wave. He's been taking a few poor trades against Faker.
Well, you think Faker's flash was burnt early doors, and since then Faker's actually been in the lead, both health and CS wise. Yike still looking for mid. Faker still a quarter of the cooldown left on his flash, but he can just dash across the wall. Grub's taken by Oner. Caps no shockwave, remember? We saw it burnt a moment ago. Yike hits a Void Seeker, but Caps is down to 150 HP.
Super awkward for Caps right now because he needs to get a base off. Oner has full control. He's going to move into the red buff, which he knows he can take because he has push in top and in mid. Maybe Yike can go for a steal, has the smite.
TP in, Broken Blade. We'll be able to join this play in just a moment. Yike knocked up. Mickey's on his way as well. Zeus the first one here. Faker moving from the mid lane. Red buff resets, and the smite not there in time to take it. G2 able to distract T1 for long enough.
Don't think he got into smiting threshold with no level up yet for Owner. Still 6 treats away. Bot side though.
Look at how much Mickey is losing off the back of this. Carrier forcing the ghost out, but Mickey roaming up to help his jungler means the plates are going to be lost. 2 waves stacked up underneath the tower. A gold lead continues to be built for Gumayushi, and while the solo lanes of G2 obviously have been doing very well in this series, it has come at the cost of Hansama losing a lot in the laning phase. Carrier provides the exit way for Gumayushi to get away to safety, as Hansama can now return to lane to collect the scraps of what is left of the wave.
Look at it, 26 CS down now. There's basically 4 waves for Gumayushi over Hansama. Hansama will be able to pick up 1, but overall, T1 in a very strong position here. 600 gold lead for Guma.
And a lot of this is going to come down to, for me, what can Broken Blade do, what can Mickey do? Because in isolation, Hans, Caps are going to have a really hard time trying to actually play team fights against Bard, against Azero who can scoop them up, and against like a Sanse. So the Renata in particular is so insanely strong against compositions that are going to try and aggressively get onto your backline. And T1 doesn't have a whole lot of range. You're really looking at, you know, some poke from Guma. We already talked about that. It's more about the setup and the follow-up damage that the Lethality Varus provides. Not in of itself enough to really keep teams on the back foot, unless T1 is able to continuously build his bot lead. And it's, again, the stabilization of mid lane, which has made this game look completely different, because Faker isn't playing from a deficit. Guma and Keria actually get to exert their pressure in the 2v2, which is where, I think, consistently in this series, Poppy game notwithstanding, they've been able to excel.
I mean, Faker's looking much more comfortable now.
All these tunnels. I love Rek'Sai.
Keria, level 6. Mickey very far behind in terms of XP. All the other objectives are going T1 to 8. G2's options feel very limited in terms of where they can actually set up plays. You've got to remember the added safety, even though Faker lost his flash. Oh, here we go.
Tempered Fate coming out. Mickey caught first, Cosmic Binding just short there. Handshake back as Hans Sama tries to open up. Owner here as well. Gumayushi can step past the tower in just a moment. Yikes on his way. Mickey not yet. Level 6 doesn't have the hostile takeover to turn the fight into anything more for G2.
The heal was used by Keria defensively. Wind Becomes Lightning didn't connect onto Mickey. He's very close to level 6 now. Yike has an eye on mid lane. I think Faker's playing very smartly though, hovering around the top side of the lane.
He just dashes away. Yike can't tunnel onto him. It's the safety of the Azir in the mid lane.
I mean, he also has the added sustain from the fleet footwork, right? He's just doing a great job in general. Level 9 secured for him. First item finished for Gumayushi. And overall, T1 with a 1k gold lead. Just kind of thanks to the pressure that they've been putting down across the lanes and around the map.
Want to see though, because one of the big things that has been the most impressive to me about G2 is the fact that they've actually been able to hold or to fight their way back from these early deficits outside of game number 1, where obviously it was kind of the reverse. How they've been able to match T1 when it comes to the early skirmishes, something that I think T1 generally within the LCK is the best. Gen G, when it comes to mid game, when it comes to macro, they're obviously, and when it comes to sidelines, the team that excels, but the Baron calls that T1 is so often known for, not really anywhere to be seen in this series. We got one very early on, but that was about it. So we'll have to see to which extent T1 can actually hold on to this lead. Again, a lot of it is on Guma. We talked about how tough it can be for Hans Sama to play some of the later game fights. Same for Guma, honestly, because he is playing against a whole lot of aggressive backline threat.
Keria able to magical journey his way to safety. G2 got the bot side scuttle crab, but meanwhile Owner is taking the 5th, 6th grub for T1. And they also got the first rate. Neutral control very much in T1's favor in this game so far.
Oh, completely. And you can see advantages gained in mid, advantages gained in bot. Look
Keria with the stun.
I don't think they're trying to catch the wave. Yeah, I think this is a little too ambitious. And this gives a window now for Faker to push in mid. Caps is going to lose a decent amount of farm. He does, of course, have the TP. But Faker going to be happy with this. Level 10 ticked over for him.
I mean, they're looking for the Caps TP in with Yike here as well. He goes to a tunnel, so Faker doesn't immediately see it. Emperor's Divide coming out as Caps goes for the chase, but Faker able to escape the clutches of G2.
Nice little play there from G2. Doesn't really result in a huge amount, though, as Faker's able to glide away to safety. Next Dragon spawning in about 2 minutes' time as no first blood yet. And what's been a very bloody series,
it has
surprisingly calm.
Caps will want to get to the lane anyway. Doesn't really matter whether he goes to his turret or the tunnel. We do see Keria.
Tempered Fate, Capside steps, Cosmic Binding, Capside steps that too. Magical journey in by Keria. It feels like one of those, I missed everything, you have a go, Owner. And Owner decides against
Owner's
going
like,
forward.
I'm good. Let me
Summer, though, down to half HP. Faker does have the flank position here. No Emperor's Divide, remember, as Owner goes in. Crescent Guard flash away from the Chain of Corruption. Immediately, Yike and Caps try to dive on a Faker, but Hans Summer's already fallen. Hostile takeover, lands on 2 first blood. Goes over to T1, they find a second. The Cosmic Binding from Keria is just sublime, and now Caps knocked up, tries to flash, but there's no way he's getting away from Owner today. Or is he? As he continues to walk away, has to dodge, the wind becomes lightning. Owner gonna tank the tower. Audacious charge is enough as Yike balls as well. It's 4-1 T1.
And just like that, T1 blow the game open. A single fight is all it takes. 3,000 now the gold lead. Hans gets trapped in the river. And without any hesitation, T1 collapse.
Mickey also not able to find a whole lot of impact with that ultimate. So instead it gets broken up into these little fights where, unfortunately, for G2, they're not able to take down any of the targets in time. The Bard providing a lot of added delay as well. And I understand that G2 want to look for this because there is no ultimate on Faker. Owner goes in super aggressively, and even with the Chains of Corruption not hitting, two members are trying to take down Faker, whereas Hans gets burst down immediately, and then Mickey, again, his ultimate not actually finding anything, ends up going down. And then that tunnel, I don't know if they get out otherwise, but definitely didn't hit the mark.
I mean, at this point, Yike also trying to do what he can against Gumayusi, but he's level 9. He's going to tick over to level 10 off the back of this as well. And now this Varus is incredibly fed. They don't have a Zac this time. They don't quite have that same dive buddy presence, which means that Gumayusi not going to be as scared as he was in game 2.
That's also a Comet Varus.
Yeah.
It's not Lethal Temple like on hit, you know, in the long fight. He doesn't even have Veil of Blades.
Opportunity knocking for Gumayusi.
Oh yeah.
The lethality already with that serrated Dirk as well. And now G2 very much in a hole. T1, this is kind of more of what we expected from them in this series. Getting out to an early lead, 4,000 gold their advantage. And the question for G2 is how on earth do you fight back from here? Because T1 are so good at suffocating you out of the game.
And that's exactly it. Look at how they'll use their mid-pressure now to unlock Carrier to roam around the map. They have push in top lane. It's been a pretty neutral matchup, but Carrier wants to try and change that. There's not much of a wave to play around, so it's going to remain a neutral matchup. The biggest problem that G2 have to deal with is how do they shut down Gumayusi? And even if they do, Faker's continuing to ramp up on this Azir. They have two huge threats. And I don't know if this Cosmo is going to be enough. We'll have to wait and see. Is this Xin Zhao is going to be a problem?
Another big thing in the previous game was that because Mickey was on the Fed Poppy, he could just walk in and provide very easy, very safe vision. And there wasn't really an opportunity for T1 to punish him any time. On the Renata, obviously not going to be the case. The Poppy's still in the game, but Broken Blade not only able to nearly have as much of an impact when it comes to setting up for these objectives, as he needs to match one of T1's solo laners in a side lane. We're looking at bounties on the board already here, and this slower pace, seemingly T1, at least for now, benefiting the most. And even though Faker did take a death there, I think we are seeing him, as you actually we talked about this a little bit coming into the day, Veddy, Faker's champion pool, and it's funny because it's Faker, and he's played, I forgot everything. I think it's like,
it's
like
after
79 or 80.
After Aurelion Sol, he was at 82 champions.
There you go.
But
Yeah.
Wow.
So obviously his champion pool is as wide as League goes, but hold on.
Hits. Hostile takeover is going to be popped. Gumayushi's going to be caught in the back of it. Broken Blade with a flank position. Yike with a double knocker, but Cat's not quite here yet for G2. The Tempered Fate buys a second. Carrier is going to be the first to fall as G2 continue the battle. Faker in with the Emperor's Divide, but Faker low. Zeus on that front line though can tank for days. Broken Blade can't quite land the stun into the wall, but the shockwave. Pathmaker out. Zeus survives. Living Artillery just short. From G2, they find one, only Carrier falls.
Okay, so G2 actually win a fight there. The TP from Faker doesn't really result in much, and it opens up this mid tower. Some bounty gold will go back to G2 as they show that, hey, T1, you have to be careful. Don't overstep your boundaries. Because they get all the summoners out from Gumayusi. A nice flank TP from Broken Blade could have been the demise as G2 only find a single kill.
Smack dab in the middle there. Faker doesn't join until realistically it's already too late. Nice knock up there again from Yike. And Guma gets taken out of this fight so early because first he goes berserk, then has to use the summoners just to stay alive. And then here, by the time Faker shows up, it's only really to try and get himself out. The fact that Zeus doesn't die is actually quite big. If Hansama ends up getting that kill as well, and maybe they can start getting him in a better position. Could have been big as Guma.
Gumayusi, no summoners on him. Chain of Corruption goes wide and Guma's just down. Cap's TPing behind as well. Drake up in a minute and a half, still a while. But G2 now find another kill. And once again, the curse of being in the lead seems to be playing up in this game.
An uncharacteristic mistake from Gumayushi, the staple of T1, finds himself overextended in mid lane and is collapsed on by G2. Crucially, they give that shutdown over to Hans.
Faker going in. Titanic Hydra, not enough. The shockwave onto Faker. Yike dashing away, but Ona's here and will happily accept that kill. Carrier with another Cosmic Binding. Hansama trying to close in from the side, but he knows that Ona's on his way. Camp's falling low, but will manage to fight another day.
And just like that, T1 reaffirm their control. They remind G2 that this jungle does not belong to them. They find a pick onto Yike and go back to their winning ways.
Owner on this Xin Zhao, exactly where he needs to be. Has looked, I think, by far the best on this. One of the big things that I was wondering about coming into the tournament is what is Owner going to play, given that the champion he has looked the best on over like the last year and a half, the Rel, has been taken out of the jungle. Xin Zhao clearly has been one of his main champions that he is able to have this mid-game impact on. That said, though, 2 TPs were invested there from G2, both to great effect. The gold lead, though, still 4K in favor, and the Hextech Soul specifically is one that I don't think you can afford to give soul points to. Zeus alone here.
Doesn't have the Ghost, has the Pathmaker. Steadfast Presence locked him up for a second. Broken Blade chasing in, Void Rush, Caps collapsing, Ona's on his way, but can Zeus survive for long enough? The all-out might not be enough as Caps lands a shockwave on 2, and now Ona with a bounty on his head in the middle of 3 members of G2. Caps flashes out of vision, and Ona has to flash away. Collapsing though, T1 come in. Gumayushi there first. Yike dashes away from the chain of corruption. Ona falling low, but the piercing arrow from Gumayushi never misses its mark. T1 find another.
Guma doesn't miss those arrows, and that's pivotal because otherwise this could have been a disaster. Owner not dying could have, or rather Owner dying could have been a turning point. Zaze goes down. Now the question becomes, does T1 still get their way with this dragon? Setting up soul point here would be huge, and there was a lot invested to the top side by G2.
Faker secures a tower in the bot lane and gets another 700 gold for himself. G2 just want to try and find a pick. T1 is setting up the map nicely with the push in mid and the push in bot, which means that Zeus losing his life here isn't the end of the world. But T1 say we can actually fight this. The arrival of Ona thinks that, hey, I can turn this around. He commits as much as he can, but he almost loses his life. He's forced to flash away. The arrival of T1's bot lane is what turns the fight around. Look at this arrow from Gumayushi. Nicely done. We find him landing these arrows crucially in so many fights. He finds another, brings himself to 3-1-2.
Without the bounty going over, still see this huge level. Last time, Yike on the Rex side was a raid boss, unable to be taken down by anyone on T1. That's not the case here, and it looks like with Caps over the top side and not having a teleport available just yet, they are just going to give up the soul point. I understand for G2, but T1 going to be very happy about that.
G2 in the hole right now. 2 items on Ona, 2 as well on Gumayushi. He's building up towards that Manamune. Faker a little bit behind, but still ahead in terms of gold. He's just got Piecemeal, Seeker's Arm Guard, and a Void Staff on its way. Crypt Bloom complete for Caps. We'll be trying to get towards that Rabadons, but right now, T1 in the ascendancy, looking to take us to 5 games again.
Yeah, it's a throwaway, Harold. It's a charge. Yeah. Good enough.
They get what they wanted. Damage is done. Look at the difference in mid lane as this time around. 1.1k for Faker, almost level 14. So much more confidence in his play. As right now, the entirety of T1. I mean, the way they've built these leads has just been through superior laning and smart map moves. They've had full control over the early objectives, and it felt like G2 have just had no options. This Cogmore pick came out as an answer to Varus, and it just hasn't worked out. Perhaps if they can scale for long enough, there's a world in which G2 can turn these fights around, but right now, it is fully T1's game to lose, to bring us to Silver Scrapes, to bring us to a game 5.
Quickly seen here. TP behind. Hansama has 2 items. Yike goes in. They look for Ona first. Crescent Guard pop by Flash. Broken Blade might go for Guma. Can knock him into the wall. Carrier, though, is going to spot him. Steadfast Presence going down as the Sundisk is used. Flash from Mickey with a hostile takeover, but it only lands onto the Azir. Yike trying to do what he can in the middle of the fight. Ona's already down to half HP, but Yike and Mickey and G2 have to retreat because gold from Carrier. The shockwave only lands on 1. It's Ona, not the target that G2 wanted. And Baker has had enough. He slides G2 into the waiting moors of his team as T1 look to take us to match points.
Oh, this is the classic T1. You think you're fine? The geometry of that fight with the Bard, the TPs. But in the end, at the very least, they're going to get the inhib. But knowing them, I'm feeling it, they're going to try and bring us to back-to-back silver scrapes.
There is something inevitable about Faker. There is something indomitable about T1. Mickey comes up alive, 8 seconds on Hansama. No minion wave here for T1, but they have the might to try and help out. The wave about 5 seconds away. Hansama will respawn in time. T1 take the gate out and have a little patience.
They were so close to ending the game right there, but the Baron will have to do. All 5 members remain alive. And the fight was so disconnected. G2's Hansama was nowhere to be found. He couldn't land the damage. The shockwave was barely impactful. Caps! He completely whiffs the shockwave. Doesn't even send the ball over. Another to add to the list of Caps fails as T1 walks away with the Baron.
Been a lot of ups and downs as this all starts off with Owner getting engaged on. It's so hard to actually take down a Xin Zhao and do reliable damage. Scaria zones Broken Blade away, then Owner ends up going back in here, which keeps Caps away, and Hansama, as you pointed out, Letty, nowhere near the fight.
Faker has no threat onto him, he's just able to keep dishing damage out. There, the shockwave only connects onto Owner, and at this point, as Medic said, Faker had enough. Flashes in, connects the ult onto 2, creates a wall that G2 cannot escape from.
And this Quagmire hasn't felt great. That flash didn't either. T1
is quintessential.
It's about to bring us to another silver scrapes, and man, what a treat it's been.
And what a turnaround, an absolute stomp from start to finish from T1, reminding the world why they are so feared. They're continuing the siege. Good damage from Guma. Forces G2 back as they chip away at this tower.
There have been 9 5-game series in MSI history. We might get 2 in a row. In fact, I think it's pretty much certain now as T1 push in for the top lane inhibitor. G2 have half a Nexus tower to try and defend. Broken Blade, steadfast presence will stop Owner's engage. Gumayushi down to half HP. Zeus pulled back with a handshake, but he's tanky enough. G2 looking for any last vestige of hope, sending up prayers, looking for a miracle. Broken Blade finds one perhaps as Owner's locked up. He flashes the wall. All they're going to do is buy a little time here. But time is swiftly running out. Kronos himself is playing for T1, and Faker goes in again. Stopwatches, the tempered fate from Carrier. In fact, the Streamer slide was not enough. The shockwave from G2 will do nothing as T1 assert their dominance on the series and take us to silver scrapes.
5 games, wouldn't have it any other way. An international rivalry that hasn't delivered in a while, but is delivering today. Gumayushi said, no, I'm carrying this one. And off the back of his Varus, they bring us to game 5.
T1, I think in this series, the first classic T1 game that any T1 fan will have seen countless times in the LCK. Dominance from start to finish, something they haven't really been able to find in this series up until this point.
We'll see if they can continue that dominance in game 5. We're going to hand it over to the analyst desk to break down that game.
Let's go again. We get another game 5 after we saw one yesterday as well. But will this one have a different ending? Will the underdog be able to finish the job today? Or will T1 shut the door? Because when you know T1 and when you know what they're good at and how they like to play and how they played in this series up until this point, you know that this feels so good because everything is working out.
I think a huge amount of it is, like, as you say, T1 finding their stride. It's, hey, we're going to have lanes that we can try and play through, set up for Owner, keep Yike under control. And from that point, you're not seeing Faker fall behind. Faker suddenly coming alive with these plays that we know him for on the Azir, and Gumayushi on this Varus in a great matchup, able to dominate the entire game.
This is the Guma carrier lane that we knew and we expected, and we got it in game 4. That was really well done. I think they recognized the lane was going to be strong, and they really bulleted it and didn't give Hansama some breathing room.
Yeah, G2, to give them a due though, did not want to go down without a fight.
No.
I think this was a bit of a mistake though. BB Probably should have just focused on towards Owner to get him in. Hansama not part of this fight. So you really needed a lot of core decisions to go in your favor here as G2. And even then right at the end, the shockwave just barely missing. It felt like it was just out of G2's reach. And T1 at this stage had already built up such a strong lead that Faker knows as long as he can make that sweep happen, they can sweep G2 with us.
Yeah, and that ulti from Keria to keep them interested, to set up for that Azir ulti. This is the T1 that people know and love.
Yeah, in those team fights also, you say it, G2 was very, very far behind. You felt like they really wanted to play forward. They try to make it happen. They almost get a pick on Owner. Also kind of target selection from T1 in fights, how they run interference so that G2 can't pull off the correct damage that they need to put down, knowing that they're already behind. It was beautiful to see.
Yeah, and I think a huge amount of it came down to the draft. I think the fact that we ended up having the control coming through for Gumayushi in that bot lane with targeting a huge amount of the AD carry pool to put onto a Kog'Maw for Hansama that he didn't look particularly comfortable on. It meant that you had the control you needed from the bot side of the map. You then forced the Poppy into this weird position, the top side. G2 have a composition that doesn't really get to engage, so you get to play out the map as you want because you don't really have to worry about G2 doing anything apart from these weird TP plays that they had to throw at them because they had nothing else they could really do.
Yeah, this would have been a great game to actually get the swap off. That was something that you were expecting. That was something I was like, yeah, I can see it. I mean, there are lanes in which Cog can breathe. Like, there are a few lanes, but Varus isn't one of them. And it was tough, especially in times in which the Poppy was roaming, or at least the Renata was roaming. It made it so, okay, suddenly Bard can actually get in between turrets and force him off back to turret, or back to his fountain, and he really was just falling behind again and again.
Yeah, this was already, I think, the play that broke the camel's back in 13 minutes.
Exactly, and it's G2 taking skirmishes that they didn't need to. You have a Kog'Maw that would like to scale, an Orianna that would like to scale. And the only real damage that you have is going to come from your jungler and potentially a little bit from Caps. But even you can see in this fight, G2 already knew that it was a losing battle. They completely abandoned Hansama and say, look, we can't save you in this one. Mickey can do his damnedest to try and at least get out. So they turn onto Faker. But as that, G2 have to overextend and T1 just sweep up, knowing they are stronger in the skirmish.
And we got to be fair, we were following the mid lane matchup overall. You said a bit fraudulent from Faker in one of the previous games.
Yes,
this was a little bit fraudulent for Caps, maybe?
That's a little bit. A little bit. I did feel as though it was snowballing off the points that you were making.
Yeah.
Once their bot lane was behind, they needed to send resources to try and get something back, and nothing was working. But yes, to the point that you're making, Faker's coming back. And now he has some momentum going into Game 5.
He has a Game 5. T1 has a little bit of Game 5 trauma, of course, but this is an MSI where they want to show their best side. It was also an MSI where G2 beat T1 at MSI, and they needed 5 games. They did it again at Worlds, as it has been 1,650 days since then. The reason why I say this is because this is a Game 5 in the context of all of that, right? In terms of a struggle for Europe, for G2, since that point, in terms of being very close, but you have to finish the job. We saw it from PSG yesterday. So I want to hear from both sides. How does G2 do it? How does T1 do it?
Yeah, as you say, I mean, look, it's been 5 years since they beat T1, but this has been a win that G2 have been building for 2 years. They've been trying desperately to get this into a position where they can try and carry, and I think coming back into blue side is going to be massive for them. T1 can't target as heavily onto the AD carry pool. You get to go for that first pick Kalista, which has worked out for them thus far, and if that is then going to be the plan, I think you can play for that creativity that we saw from G2 over the course of Game 1, 2, and 3.
Are you flip-flopping?
I'm not flip-flopping. That'd be too many flips. But I think my answer would just be to follow Mickey X, because throughout the series, what Mickey X has been doing really well has been working towards Caps and making fights just basically outnumbered. And as long as he gets to be followed by Keria, then thumbs up. Also, just don't cut out. This game also was in jeopardy just because of that mid lane fight that happened in 16 minutes, and then Varus getting caught. There's a lot of openings that G2 had when it should not have happened.
No, and especially in that early game, straight off the bat, right? You saw it there, that Owner and T1's game plan, it was, okay, we also can't give Yike any advantage in these games. I think they're garnering a lot of respect for that jungler throughout this series and rightly identifying that you cannot get him going because he will make things happen.
Yeah, and that's why I think the beauty of that last draft from T1 is that they had all these winning lanes and pushing lanes that they could work through, because it just kept Yike out of the equation. And if you're able to do that again, I think that's where you're going to be able to try and focus. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a Xin Zhao coming through, high priority and some sort of pushing bot lane that they can try and play through. And maybe this is the game we get lane swaps, but I'd much rather we just stick to basics here for G2.
I mean, is this where it now gets in their head and they think, okay, that bot lane might, Gumayusi's consistency overall, Karia's playmaking potential. Do you feel like they're going to lane swap this time?
I think they're just not going to go for the Kog'Maw. If they do go for it again, then they will lane swap.
Okay.
But I think they'll try and stick to lanes because it's been working so well for Broken Blade in particular. So just pick a stronger bot lane and then just try and match because T1 has been matching and it's been working well for G2.
Oh, it has. It's match point. It's T1 that clawed their way back to silver scrapes. It's G2 who is attempting to roll back the years. 5 years, in fact. They needed a Game 5 at that MSI in 2019, but T1 is attempting to rewrite and overwrite that memory. We're going to silver scrapes. We'll get Game 5 right after this.